All right. Hey, everybody. Uncle Rich here for Who's Telling the Truth. Guys, today is February 13th, 2017, and this is show number 164, and the name of the show is Mentally Ill. And guys, I just don't know how else to put it. I mean, I've been asking Joey, you know, our buddy Uncle Joey, our pillbilly T-hottest, T-Billy up in Catskill, New York. I've been asking him, I said, Joey, is Trump mentally ill? Or we could say it the other way, you know, Trump is mentally ill. I mean, it's the same. Judy, can you put up both sayings? Oh, okay, she's got one down on the bottom. Trump is mentally ill, so we're making a statement. And the other one is Trump mentally ill? Guys, it's the same four words with a completely different tone and texture, and this is what's making me crazy, because I really don't think that Trump is mentally fit to run the country. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm not saying it to be funny. I'm not saying it as a joke. Guys, I really think that Trump is mentally ill. I think he's nuts. You know, and Uncle Joe, I asked Uncle Joey, I said, Joe, you know, does it bother you when somebody constantly lies to you? You know, does that bother you? And Joey said to me once, I said, Joe, what would happen if one of your kids lied to you? And Joey's a tough guy. Joey said, I'd knock the snot out of him. Sure, you'd knock the snot out of your kids, but when it comes to the President of the United States, you don't say boo. Why is that, Joe? I mean, what could push you to such an extreme where you avoid the truth? And, you know, you follow in lockstep with this guy, and he's a Fruit Loop. And I tell you, the best way to put what a head case Trump is, Bill Maher had so much fun. And we're going to do a couple of Bill Maher clips at the end. But to start the show off, listen to Maher, and he asked the question, is Trump mentally ill? So, Judy, clip number one, please.
Well, here's the thing.
Okay,
he's
self-defeating.
the president of the United States. He needs to put his big boy pants on. Then don't be president of the United States. That's what you're going to get. You're going to get criticized.
That is a good point.
Let me just show you, first of all, let me just show you something he said this week. Show the tape where I was a good student. I think it starts with his reacting to the Muslim man. To your point about whether he is mentally ill or not.
I understand things. I comprehend very well. Okay? Better than, I think, almost anybody.
Okay, not only is that mentally ill, but it reminded me of this movie.
I can handle things. I'm smart. I'm like everybody says. Like dumb, I'm smart, and I want respect.
Exactly.
I can handle it. I'm smart. I ain't dumb, and I want respect. And then what did they do when he was saying the Hail Mary when they were fishing? Ay, ay, ay. But guys, you see what we're dealing with. I mean, Trump is not a rational human being. And you know, remember years ago there was a commercial on TV. What's the definition of insanity? You know, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting to get a different result. Well, guys, you know, Trump just lies over and over again, and one of his biggest problems is he just refuses to let things go. I mean, I heard him today with Justin Trudeau. They gave a mini press conference, and do you know that he had to mention that he won the election on the electoral vote? Guys, he's been president for almost a month. He can't let things go. And you know what? We're going to prove it to you. Seth Meyers is going to prove it to you. So, Judy, let's have some fun. Clip number 2, please.
In a meeting yesterday with a bipartisan group of congressional leaders, President Trump repeated the false claim that he would have won the popular vote had it not been for 3 to 5 million people who voted illegally. Which brings us to a segment we call, Hey! Hey! Why do you keep lying about this? There is zero evidence for this claim. Also, why would you say 3 to 5 million people? We already know from the inauguration that you have no idea what 1 million people looks like. Just accept you're bad at guesstimating. How many kids do you have? Well, there's Ivanka, 20. But hey, you won the election. What are you complaining about? You're like a guy who wins the Super Bowl and spends the post-game interview complaining about a pass interference call in the first quarter. Winners don't complain about the final score. You know who does? Degenerate gamblers. Ooh. But I guess if you knew anything about gamblers, your casinos would still be open. The election. The election is over, and you're the president. So let me just say what dozens of women have already said to you. Hey, let go of it. This has been Hey.
Let go of it. But, you know, I tell you, this, you know, it bothers me. It scares me. And, you know, what scares me is, you know, you've got guys like Al Franken who are on ABC TV, and they're befuddled. I mean, what do you do when the President of the United States makes a buffoon out of himself? I mean, really, what do you do? Well, I'll show you what you do. Here's Al Franken's response. So, Judy, clip 3, please.
Is it true that Republican colleagues of yours expressed concern about President Trump's mental health?
A few.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's nuts.
It's not the majority of them, it's a few.
A few.
In
That's
what
all
way?
it takes.
In the way that we all have this suspicion that, you know, that he lies a lot. He says things that aren't true. That's the same as lying, I guess.
Yeah.
He, you know, 3 to 5 million people voted illegally. There was a new one about people going in from Massachusetts to New
Thousands and thousands in a bus, yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, that is not the norm for a president of the United States or actually for a human being.
Guys, you know, sometimes it's just hard to believe. And the next clip we're going to play you is Brian Stelter, and he's on with Andrew Sullivan. And I believe he's from New York Magazine. And guys, these guys, I mean, they're really questioning. And when you see the stuff that Trump has had to say, you know, hopefully, you know, you'll be questioning it too. And I mean, eventually, even Uncle Joey is going to have to bite the bullet, and he's going to have to say, you know, Rich, you're right. You're right. They got he's mentally ill. And you know what? He's got Obamacare. Yeah, that's right. So he can get checked up and checked out, and we could make nice with Donald. You know, we can get him a nice quiet room by himself, you know. I'm thinking of like an asylum like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But anyway, the next clip is going to be Andrew Sullivan with Brian Stelter. And guys, enjoy it.
This is a national emergency. You use the word emergency in your column. Why? What's your case?
Because any liberal democracy, any constitutional democracy, relies upon something we call the objective truth. Now, some politicians fib and lie. In fact, almost all of them do to some extent. But they always do it in a way that pays some sort of deference to reality. And what we've discovered is that in the last 3 weeks, this president, rather like he did on the campaign trail, simply insists that black is white, that things that we can see with our own eyes, like the size of his inauguration crowd, are not exactly what we're seeing. And he's able to command his underlings to actually go out there and also say things that are empirically untrue. This is not about politics or ideology. Like, there are some things that Trump believes in, for example, a more restrained America around the world, immigration controls, for example, that I'm sympathetic to. It's about the ability for the president to tell the truth and for us to believe it. And to have such an unstable figure incapable of accepting reality at the center of the world is an extremely dangerous thing.
You said unstable. In your column, you said mentally unstable. Why do you think it's appropriate to be describing the president that way?
I'm not a shrink, and if I were, I wouldn't say this anyway, because you can't diagnose someone. But I'm a human being, and I can tell if someone is saying things that we know not to be true and never corrects it. For example, that the murder rate, which is a very solid statistic, you know, there are dead bodies we can count. When he says the murder rate is the highest it's been in 45 to 47 years, what are we supposed to do, Brian? Well, what is anybody supposed to do? This is simply completely bonkers. He's saying things that do not exist. When a president is saying things like that and doesn't correct himself, has no one correct him, we have fact checkers now every day of the week compiling lists and lists and lists of things he's saying that are empirically untrue, false. Now, I don't know whether he knows they're false, but if he doesn't know they're false, then he needs to be informed. Right. If he knows they're false and still saying it's true, then, and if he doesn't know, then he shouldn't be in that office.
On the point about the murder rate, I remember the day he made that false statement this week. I talked with my editors at CNN, the head of standards at CNN. We reached the conclusion that that specifically was a lie, and called it a lie because it's been corrected so many times, debunked so many times, that by now he must know the truth about the murder rate. But you're taking it a couple steps further by questioning his mental stability. And I wonder why you think that's not being said more often on television or in columns like your own. Do you feel like you're a bit alone on this issue? And if so, why?
Well, I think others are picking up on it. Certainly, if you're not on camera or not writing, people are talking about this all the time. I think sometimes you want to assume that there is a rationality at the center of our entire republic, that there is someone who can listen to reason, who can see an empirical fact, who can distinguish between an opinion and a fact, between what he wants to be true and what is true. And sometimes we don't want to say that in public. We can't. But look, we're journalists, and we're trying to understand what's happening. And if we don't just simply say what's in front of our eyes, what use are we? I mean, how are we supposed to do this when someone keeps telling us untruths every day?
Are you describing a failure of journalism, you think, that it's not being addressed more publicly?
Well, I think the journalists have been doing a fantastic job in many ways of fact-checking. But fact-checking doesn't really capture the extent of what's going on. And I think many journalists, for good reasons, because we don't want to say something's not right here, have to conform to certain routines and procedures and norms that we used to use. And, you know, all politicians, they say, fib, they pass the truth. Phil Clinton was someone who seemed to fib all the time. But they always paid some reference to reality. And when it was pointed out, when a fact was pointed out, they would correct it. He won't correct anything. In fact, I don't think of all the hundreds and hundreds of false statements he's made, he and his spokesman have not actually retracted a single one. And you ask yourself, why?
They might point to birtherism and say Trump did come out before Election Day and say President Obama was born in the U.S. That's the only example that comes to my mind of a statement that he corrected.
That's true, Brian. Only, as you saw, if you saw that press conference, it was incredibly reluctant, rushed, and then immediately followed by another attack.
Do you worry, though, that talking about this, about his psychology, you calling him mentally unstable and delusional, do you worry that it further causes divisions in the country, makes it impossible for the people who voted for him to want to hear you out?
Of course I do. And God knows, I wish I weren't here having to say this. No one wants to be here saying this. I don't want to believe the President of the United States is just delusional or cannot accept reality. Of course not. It pains me. It gives me great pain and concern and distress. But at some point, being a writer or a journalist requires one to simply say what one is seeing in front of one's eyes. And sometimes you have to say that in plain English.
So you don't see any alternative explanations for his behavior?
Well, I do think that his ego is involved. I do think that he wants not to seem as if he's gotten something wrong. He does want to say things that advance certain policies that he wants to propose, all of which is fine. All of which is. But what I'm saying is if you continually do that and you never recognize reality, if you're still insisting, as he was as lately as last Friday, that there was massive voter fraud, that millions of people voted, all of whom voted for Hillary Clinton, didn't vote for him, were voting in the last election. That is simply, first of all, completely untrue. It's also deeply destructive of democratic legitimacy. And it is, to put it frankly, a little bonkers.
There's been a strain of reaction in television and in conservative media circles that all this media coverage of Trump, all this criticism of Trump, people suggesting he's unstable, it's all hysteria. Take a look at this compilation from Fox News.
You read these hysterical headlines in the media. You got the mainstream media beating him up.
I thought there was a lot of media hysteria over the Trump executive order on the refugees. You know, more of the same kind of hysterical hand-wringing that seems now to go on about everything that Donald Trump ever says.
He's opposed by the mainstream media.
Andrew, you calling this an emergency is going to have them saying you're being hysterical. Your reaction?
Yeah, sure. Say that. I mean, I'm happy to be called hysterical if people want to call me that. I would ask them instead, how do you explain the constant barrage of untruths, falsehoods, and lies coming out of this person? How do you explain that? And when you talk about hysteria, I'm not tweeting in the early hours of the morning in all caps. I'm not out of control in terms of tweeting every morning, noon, and night about things that are not true, violating established norms of responsible behavior in the office of the president. If there is anybody who's actually exhibiting hysteria, panic, out of controlness, it's coming from the Oval Office, not from the rest of us. Liberal democracy requires some consensus, some common facts, some common reality for us to have a really good fight over. Like we should have bare knuckles fights ideologically, politically, and everything, but we have to relate it to reality at some point, our interpretation of reality. And when the central figure in our political system is creating an entire world of unreality, how are we supposed to respond? And I think we have to respond. We have to respond by saying, excuse me, Mr. President, with all due respect, you keep telling us things that are not true. Can you please stop this? And if you can't stop it, if you simply keep asserting the world is one way when it really isn't, because everybody else can see it, then we have a serious problem at the very heart of our government. And denying that, or tiptoeing around it, or not saying it plainly, is a failure of our duty as journalists, as writers, as reporters, to say and call it as we see it.
Andrew Sullivan, thank you so much for being here this morning.
You're so welcome, Brian.
Honestly, what do you do when the president is over the edge? What do you do? Joey, what do you do? Well, you know, I asked Joey, Joey's beside himself. He doesn't know what to do. I think the whole country doesn't know what to do. And this is the problem. It's a reality check. You know? Trump was, he seems unstable and incapable of accepting reality. I mean, when you can't accept reality, like Uncle Joey, he refuses to accept the science of global warming. Doesn't matter. Makes no difference. You could show him facts until you're blue in the face. He refuses to believe it. Why? Because he's mentally ill. Joey's been brainwashed. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. There's no doubt it. He is brainwashed. And guys, the next clip is from CBS. It's from Scott Pelley, and it's another reality check on Trump. And I mean, this is what we got to do. Just keep hammering him until finally he says, wait a minute. I can't take this anymore. Because I tell you, half his cabinet looks like they're going south. Well, they're nuttier than he is. So, Judy, let's prove my point about reality with a reality check from Scott Pelley. Clip 5, please.
President Trump told a U.S. military audience that there have been terrorist attacks that no one knows about because the media choose not to report them.
Nobody knows
It has
about
been
the
a busy
attacks.
day for presidential statements divorced from reality. Mr. Trump said this morning that any polls that show disapproval of his immigration ban are fake. He singled out a federal judge for ridicule after the judge suspended his ban, and Mr. Trump said that the ruling now means that anyone can enter the country. The president's claims, whether imaginary or fabricated, are now worrying even his backers, particularly after he insisted that millions of people voted illegally, giving Hillary Clinton her popular vote victory. There's not one state election official, Democrat or Republican, who supports that claim. Margaret Brennan is covering the president.
Radical Islamic terrorists are determined to strike our homeland.
In his first address to the troops as commander-in-chief, President Trump accused journalists of covering up terrorism.
It's gotten to a point where it's not even being reported. And in many cases, the very, very dishonest press doesn't want to report it. They have their reasons, and you understand that.
Mr. Trump offered no examples, and neither did Press Secretary Sean Spicer when he tried to clarify aboard Air Force One.
There's a lot of instances that have occurred where I don't think that they've gotten the coverage it's deserved.
The president's comments come after senior advisor Kellyanne Conway referred last week to a terrorist attack that never took place.
2 Iraqis came here to this country, were radicalized, and they were the masterminds behind the Bowling Green massacre. Most people don't know that because it didn't get covered.
She later said she misspoke, but she had talked about the purported Bowling Green attacks at least 2 other times. Conway now says she was referring to 2 Iraqi refugees accused in 2011 of supporting terrorism. Their arrests were reported in the press.
Guys, Kellyanne Conway is such a better liar than Uncle Joey. But I tell you, Uncle Joey, would I give her a run for her money? If they ever have a contest on who's the best liar, we might have our matches set up. But, you know, once again, it's all about reality. And what's one of the most important things when it comes to reality? Evidence, right? Isn't that the one thing we always say on this show? Be specific and cite your source, right? Show us the evidence. Show us the proof. Right, guys? I mean, but you know what? Trump sent out Stephen Miller. And they sent him out on Sunday to hit the talk shows. And guys, George Stephanopoulos made this guy look like a monkey. And when you see what he did to him, this is what all the journalists have to do. When somebody lies, you look them right in the eye and you call them out. And you just keep hammering them. You don't give up until either they admit the truth or they give up, one or the other. And you know, with Uncle Joey, I tell you, we can fight vehemently. You know, I mean, nothing, you know, I mean, it's not, you know, I mean, we're not after each other, but we'll just hammer each other, and Joey doesn't get it. But he's a good Republican. He's not supposed to get it. If he got it, he wouldn't be a Republican. Guys, I love Uncle Joey. He's the only one that still talks to me. But anyway, on clip number 10, we're going to show you how this guy, Stephen Miller, he sold his soul to the Trump regime. So, Judy, let's have clip 10, please.
President Trump again this week suggested in a meeting with senators that thousands of illegal voters were bused from Massachusetts to New Hampshire, and that's what caused his defeat in the state of New Hampshire, also the defeat of Senator Kelly Ayotte. That has provoked a response from a member of the Federal Election Commission, Ellen Weintraub, who says, I call upon the president to immediately share New Hampshire voter fraud evidence so that his allegations may be investigated promptly. Do you have that evidence?
I've actually, having worked before on a campaign in New Hampshire, I can tell you that this issue of busing voters into New Hampshire is widely known by anyone who's worked in New Hampshire politics. It's very real. It's very serious. This morning on this show is not the venue for me to lay out all the evidence, but I can tell you this. Voter fraud is a serious problem in this country. You have millions of people who are registered in 2 states or who are dead who are registered to vote, and you have 14% of non-citizens, according to academic research, at a minimum, are registered to vote, which is an astonishing statistic.
You can't hold on a second. You just claimed again that there was illegal voting in New Hampshire, people bused in from the state of Massachusetts. Do you have any evidence to back that up?
George, go to New Hampshire, talk to anybody who's worked in politics there for a long time. Everybody's aware of the problem in New Hampshire with respect to
I'm asking you as the White House senior
hold
on a second. I'm asking you as the White House senior policy advisor. The president made a statement saying he was the victim of voter fraud, people being bused from Massachusetts and New Hampshire.
The president was.
Do you have any evidence?
If this is an issue that interests you, then we can talk about it more in the future. And we now have our government's beginning to get stood up, but we have a Department of Justice and we have more officials. And the issue of voter fraud is something we're going to be looking at very seriously and very hard. But the reality is that we know for a fact you have massive numbers of non-citizens registered to vote in this country. Nobody disputes that. And many highly qualified people, like Chris Kobach, the Kansas Secretary of State, have looked deeply into this issue and have confirmed it to be true and have put together evidence. And I suggest you invite Chris Kobach onto your show, and he can walk you through some of the evidence of voter fraud in greater detail.
All right, just for the record, you have provided absolutely no evidence. The president has made a statement.
The White House has provided enormous evidence with respect to voter fraud, with respect to people being registered in more than one state, dead people voting, non-citizens being registered to vote. George, it is a fact, and you will not deny it, that there are massive numbers of non-citizens in this country who are registered to vote. That is a scandal. We should stop the presses, and as a country, we should be aghast about the fact that you have people who have no right to vote in this country, registered to vote, canceling out the franchise of lawful citizens of this country. That's the story we should be talking about, and I'm prepared to go on any show, anywhere, anytime, and repeat it and say the President of the United States is correct 100%.
Well, you just repeated that. You just made those declarations, but for the record, you have provided zero evidence that the president was the victim of massive voter fraud in New Hampshire. You have provided zero evidence.
Anyone who's worked in New Hampshire politics is familiar with that issue.
You have provided zero evidence that the president's claim that he would have won the popular vote if 3 to 5 million illegal immigrants hadn't voted. Zero evidence for either one of those claims.
Well, it's right.
Thanks a lot for joining us this morning.
The non-citizen voting issue is pervasive and widespread, and we are going to protect our country from voter fraud. We're going to protect our borders from terrorism, and we're going to protect innocent men, women, and children from violent, criminal, illegal immigrants that need to be removed from this country. And our country will create jobs, safety, prosperity, and security, particularly for disenfranchised working people of every background, faith, and ethnicity in this country.
You can start by providing evidence to back up your claims.
You can start by backing up your claims. Did you hear that? Guys, this is the Republican Party. They just make stuff up. It's hearsay and innuendo. And what do? They blow the Republican dog whistle, the hate and fear dog whistle, so that people like Uncle Joey are all up in arms. We want our freedom. You're taking away our freedom. Nobody's taking anything from you. You know, you're being hosed. You're being duped. You've been conned. You know, Joe, and I feel sorry, but eventually you're going to have to come around. Reality stuff. But that's all there is, Joe, you know? And the next clip we're going to do is, this is from Morning Joe. This is from this morning. And guys, this guy, Stephen Miller, you know, when I watched him on the Sunday shows, and guys, I religiously watched three live shows, and I watched the fourth one, and it seemed to me that he had everything written down and rehearsed, and it was just amazing the way he went about it. But you saw the way his eyes were shifting over there. And this morning, on Morning Joe, I tell you, they just claimed that this guy is a total disgrace, not only to the Republican Party, but to humanity. That's right. When you try to trick the simple folk, when you take advantage of people like Uncle Joey, and you brainwash them and feed their head full of facts that don't exist, we got problems. So here we go with the Morning Joe clip. Judy, let's have number 11, please.
Anytime and repeat it and say the President of the United States is correct 100%.
That's a White House advisor, right?
Oh, my God. It's not even funny. You can't even...
Oh, my God. It came in all hot. So much worse.
It's much worse.
Joe is a
it's
conservative.
Much worse.
Joe Scarborough served in the conservative
100% correct.
100% correct. It is a fact, and you will not deny it, a fact that was actually a lie. Right. And then again, he learned this, I guess, in autocracy for young politicos.
Okay, you told me not to say it.
Hold on a second. Hold on. When he said what did he say about the power?
Powers of the president are very substantial.
And they shall not be questioned.
They will not be questioned.
They will not
this guy
be questioned. That is no. They are.
God.
They are questioned, my young little
lad.
Miller. They will be questioned by the court. It's called judicial review. Alexander Hamilton and James Madison wrote about it in the Federalist Papers. It was enshrined in Madison's Constitution. Andrew Jackson, you go into your president's office, you know that one, and you look on the walls, and there are all these pictures of Andrew Jackson and books of Andrew. He talked about judicial independence. He talked about the importance of the judiciary. You really need to go back and read the Constitution. And seriously, the White House has got up embarrassing themselves by putting this guy out. You got tons of phone calls.
Worst?
I had people working me. Oh, wasn't Miller great? No, he was that is the worst performance of anybody. That made Susan Rice this Sunday after Benghazi look smooth. I mean, that was horrendous and an embarrassment. And when you have somebody saying it is a fact and you will not deny it, and then saying the president will not be questioned.
Wow. Well, aren't we king?
If you actually read it, just to be clear about it, because it's in some ways worse, because what he says is the end result, this is the quote, the end result of this, meaning the challenge to the immigration order, though, is that our opponents, the media, and the whole world will soon see, as we begin to take further actions, that the powers of the president to protect our country are very substantial and will not be questioned, which is an assertion beyond the president not being questioned.
I told you
of nearly unlimited executive branch authority to do whatever it wants.
Well, that is the talk of a dictator, not somebody who is president of the United States. And I would hope the president of the United States would put him in his give
him the calls you got. It seems they're taking him seriously.
Fill up his lunchbox, put him in the corner, put him at his desk, and have him read the United States Constitution, have him read the Federalist Papers, have him read the words of our founding fathers, have him read the words of Andrew Jackson when it comes to
Joe, they don't want him to. They like him.
Yet he's being
he has the entire
he can't be rewarded
inner cadre from the top down wrapped around his finger. They love him. Tell the truth. They love this guy.
Let me just say this. Again, I will say it. We told everybody when it was coming that Donald Trump is going to win the Republican nomination. We said it early. Let me tell you something. This sort of talking, this sort of thinking, I'm just telling you right now. Oh, let me look at the date here. I'm just telling you right now, Monday, 13th, 2017. If that sort of thinking were enacted into policy, we would have impeachment proceedings within the next 6 months. Donald Trump would be impeached.
That's what the next clip's
if
about.
they did not adhere to, and by the way, if they didn't adhere to what the courts were saying. And by the way, the most bizarre thing about this is, and maybe he's just stupid, maybe he's just dumb, maybe he's ignorant, and maybe I shouldn't be so tough on him. Any fool in their first day of law school knows. And I knew the second I heard the Ninth Circuit had, Ninth Circuit, they're gonna overturn this, or they'll put a stay on it, and then it'll get to the Supreme Court, and they'll turn it around. They've got the Supreme Court. They're going to get their 5th vote. They're going to fill up hundreds of judicial vacancies over the next couple of years. So he is picking a fight and sounding like an autocrat.
And they love that.
When he doesn't have to. They are creating, right here, they are creating something. So he can go out and say that. What are they testing? Are they testing us to see if we're going to sit back like sheep and say nothing?
It'll make Judge
Wait, I want to read it.
It'll make Judge
one more
Gorsuch
time.
have to denounce him also during the confirmation hearing, because he will be asked about the independence again, and these comments will be put front and center.
Let's split this really quickly, David Ignatius. The president does have substantial powers when it comes to the borders and when it comes also to securing this country. I've written about it. I wrote that the Ninth Circuit decision was wrong. I believe it was wrongly decided. That said, we have these debates. But when they say, David, that the president has substantial power and it will not be questioned, it will not be questioned. Please, tell me, what goes through your mind when you hear that?
It sounds like another country, not the United States. The way in which judges have been singled out, one of the things that Stephen Miller said was talking about the unelected judges thinking they can run things. Donald Trump's own comment about the so-called judge, referring to a judge in Washington who made the initial district court ruling. These are deeply offensive to our system, and I should note they're deeply offensive to judges. Judges do not like being singled out in this way and having their authority challenged. The issue here is judicial review. It is central to our system of government. You are absolutely right in that Stephen Miller doesn't seem to get that, but we're a long way, I think, from courts and their role being overturned. Trump has said, maybe I'll have to go back and draft a new order for the district court, go back to the district court because I've lost in the appellate court. He's seeing I think, the reality of his choices. But what Stephen Miller said should worry everyone because it's a challenge to the way our government works.
And it absolutely should worry everyone because from the top down, they loved his performance.
They praised it.
They thought it was good.
What is so unbelievable is, Harold, is the president had a good weekend with the Japanese prime minister, a good call with China, and
a good thing happening today with Justin Trudeau, and Ivanka and the women's economic platform being
pushing.
That's good. Finally,
women's economic platform. That's great.
Good.
But all they had to do this morning was quietly issue a new executive order.
Right.
And would have put this behind. Why did they put him out? Why did they push him? Why did they have him say undemocratic things? Why did they have him say things that would do violence to the United States Constitution when they didn't have to? Why do they keep doing things like this? At first you want to say, oh, this is and then you start going, wait a second. Oh my God.
Why do they keep shooting themselves in the foot? I mean, they don't have to do this. But I think what happens is ego and the fact that Trump is a narcissist, and they just got to send him out there to protect Trump. And I mean, it gets to the point where, you would think these people are going to, like Sean Spicer is going to say, hey, look, I can't do it anymore. I can't, well, you got Kellyanne Conjob, Can you imagine when she finally says, look, I can't handle it anymore? And guys, the next clip, in that clip, that was the first time we heard the impeachment word. Well, the impeachment word, believe it or not, has been used on the floor of the House of Representatives. That's right. Representative Mark Porkin. The state he's from will be shown in a minute, but he did a clip on C-SPAN, and he mentioned the fact that he thought, as a last resort, we might have to impeach Trump. But listen to the logic, and he presents his case, and you could see, and it looks like Trump is defending some of his friends in the Middle East. And why would that be? Would it be because Trump's got interests in those countries where he didn't want to have a Muslim ban? Well, let's find out. So, Judy, let's have clip number 12, please. Congressman Mark Porkin of Wisconsin becomes the first member of Congress.
This 20-step process involves multiple background checks, interviews, and screenings, and frequently takes between 18 and 24 months for approval. However, these 7 countries do have at least one thing in common. According to Bloomberg News, the Trump Organization does not have business or pursued business deals in any of them. President Trump does, on the other hand, have business ties to other countries in the region that were excluded from the ban. His FEC filings indicate Trump Organization has development projects in Saudi Arabia and business projects possibly related to Egypt. These countries were excluded from the executive order despite being home to many of the terrorists who carried out 9/11. And in Turkey, President Trump has a licensing deal for 2 luxury towers to use his name, a deal he received up to $5 million for just last year, and he has licensing agreements with businesses in other countries in the region. Now, I'm not saying that we should ban people from these countries. I firmly oppose any ban based on nationality or religion. But it is unacceptable that business interests have played potentially a role in such a destructive policy, a policy that also makes our country less safe in the long run. This move will likely damage relationships with our Muslim allies who are fighting ISIS militants and be used as a tool by the Islamic State to increase their recruitment and radicalization efforts. Now, of course, my friends in the majority in the White House claim that the 7 countries under this order similarly targeted by our previous administration. In reality, President Trump's discriminatory ban is drastically different than President Obama's specific changes to the State Department visa waiver program, which changes focused on expedited visa privileges for dual nationals, not targeting all citizens from specific countries. But I'll bet you didn't hear Sean Spicer make that distinction. Instead, the administration is busy downplaying the number of people impacted by this decision, claiming that only 109 people were affected, aka alternative facts. And at least 700 people were denied boarding after the order was issued, and 90,000 people in these countries already have visas but will not be able to travel to the United States. It's time for the president to stop defending his divisive and unconstitutional executive order and start being transparent about his business interests. Every president elected in the modern era has released tax records to assure the American people that their actions will not be impacted by financial holdings. After promising throughout the campaign to release his tax returns, President Trump's advisors recently announced he will indefinitely hide this information from the public. These holdings potentially put President Trump in direct violation of the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution on day one. This safeguard is designed to prevent corruption and foreign influence over policy decisions by not allowing federal officials to take money from a foreign entity without congressional approval. But we've seen report after report of foreign leaders and diplomats choosing to stay at the Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C. in order to gain favor with the administration. They stand to profit from foreign governments, including a big paycheck from a Chinese bank, a large tenant of the Trump Tower. These are just tip of the iceberg examples of direct conflicts in both domestic and foreign policy under this president. Mr. President, it's time for you to fix this. 1, divest your business holdings immediately to remove any suggestion conflict in your decision making. 2, show us your tax returns so the American people and financial interests are transparent to the American people. And 3, get rid of your unconstitutional executive order, which will make us less safe and only serve to embolden our enemies. Short of that, we'll have to take other actions, including legislative directives, resolutions of disapproval, and even explore the power of impeachment. I yield back.
Explore the power of impeachment. Guys, you heard it, right? Explore the power of impeachment. Hey, Donnie, you're going to mess around, kid. You're going to get your ass kicked. It's that simple. You can't play games with the Constitution. Doesn't matter if you're president or not. Makes no difference. And I tell you guys, with the next clip, we're going to go back to Bill Maher. And, you know, Bill Maher is going to teach us something that Uncle Donnie never learned. And it's about learning. You know? So he said for this Valentine's Day, if there's one gift he wants to get, it's the gift of learning. And Uncle Joey, Uncle Joey, please pay attention to this clip, because you know what? You just might learn something. So Judy, clip number 20, please. Go right there.
And finally, new rule with Valentine's Day coming up. Everyone must take a minute and remember their first love. I sure remember mine. I went off to college at 18, and I fell hard. Not for a girl. That would have been my first choice. But I was a slow developer socially. You know those letters that college guys send to Penthouse magazine that begin, "I never thought this would happen to me." Yeah, well, that never happened to me. But I did fall. I did fall in love with books and ideas and knowledge. And also my hand, that's true. But there is no doubt that it is truly a kind of love affair when you go off to a place where you have intellectual epiphanies because learning is so revered and the celebrities are the smartest people. I might have been able to get a blowjob in college, but I got my mind blown on a regular basis. But you know, that was another country. One of the saddest things about the one we live in now is we don't seem to want smart people in our lives anymore.
Uncle Joey.
Smart presidents, can't have that. Scientists, what do they know? Newspaper editors, liars, fake news. You know, people used to get their news from newspapers because professional newsrooms took separating fact from fiction seriously and employed people who had studied how to do that. But now people get their news on Facebook by sharing, or as it used to be called, hearsay.
Hearsay and innuendo. Right, Uncle Joey? We don't need any facts.
Instead of all the news
Just
that's
tell
fit
me.
to print, you click on a link from your cousin Jody, who runs the Tilt-A-Whirl. Why waste money on a subscription to a newspaper when they would just blow it on war correspondence? Gone are the Ben Bradleys of the world who brought a president to his knees way before Monica Lewinsky did. A student in a social media focus group once said, "If the news is important, it will find me." Except it doesn't. And that's how we wound up with President Bannon and his dummy Donnie. It's not surprising that it can't find you, since on social media, news competes with videos of Russian car crashes, creepy clowns, and a rabbi doing the mannequin challenge. And you know how they say you can't make this shit up? Turns out you can. By Election Day last year, the top fake news on Facebook was getting more shares, clicks, and comments than the real news. Millions of people believed some straight-up bullshit that the Pope had endorsed Trump. When in fact, after Trump won, what the Pope said was, "I'm praying for his enlightenment." To which God said, "I've done a lot of miracles, but give me a fucking break." We used to respect scientists. That's why every stoner in the 70s had a poster of Einstein on the wall. Right next to the one of the naked black chick with the huge afro. But now only 36% of Americans say they have a lot of trust that information from scientists is reliable. Well, 98% of scientists say humans evolved over the millennia, but that view is shared by not nearly as many real Americans. Trump supporters don't think species can change over time, but they do think Trump used to be all about himself, but now he's working for us. This Valentine's Day, can we please fall in love with knowledge again? You know, under President Obama, the Secretary of Energy was first a Nobel Prize winner and then a nuclear physicist. Not that Trump's pick for the job doesn't have impressive credentials. How did it happen? We went from being led by the smartest person in the room to the biggest jackass on Twitter.
Wow. And guys, if that, if that isn't the truth, and I mean, why? Why is it? Why did the Republican Party sell out? It's simple. They were bought out. They were bought out by corporate America and the 1%. And this is what you get. You get people like Trump. But, last week there was, Bill Maher did a special with Van Jones. And he does a new show called The Messy Truth. And guys, they had so much fun making fun of the simple folk. And we're going to end the show on this clip. And Judy, I'm not sure about the time, but, do me a favor. We'll come back in with the credits when there's about 30 seconds. And just leave me 15 seconds to say goodbye to everybody. But guys, let's keep enjoying what Bill Maher has done for us. So Judy, clip number 21, please.
This is a huge honor for me. Bill Maher has become the leading critical voice in the age of Trump. Please welcome to the stage a national treasure who is trying to make America sane again, the legendary Bill Maher. Welcome to the stage in the House.
That was very sweet of you, Senator. Thank you very much. Thank you, folks.
My goodness, it is an honor.
And the man.
Honor to have you here, sir.
Honor to be here. You're doing great in your new job.
It's good.
Wasn't it great to get fired?
Listen, you know
we
what?
We both got fired and came out smelling like a rose.
We should call our shows Lemonade. You know what I mean? They gave us lemons.
That's right.
But we got the lemonade. Yeah. Now, speaking of lemonade, I'm sure from a personal point of view, from a political point of view, this whole Trump thing really sucks. But as a professional comic, is this guy like a gold mine for you or what?
Well, of course he is. The problem is, how long can it go on? I mean, we're only in the first month of his presidency.
Like the first couple weeks.
And I mean, I have a little fatigue about it.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to talk about Trump. I'm going to tell this to my audience this week. We also have to not talk about Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, there's one guy who is definitely not talking about Donald Trump or thinking about Donald Trump. What do you think this guy is feeling right now?
He should run again and tell us that's his twin brother, Dave. Dave Obama.
Dave Obama.
He had a twin.
Exactly.
We already looked into the birth certificate, so they won't find anything there. Trump will send his investigators to Hawaii. Well, by the way, how's that investigation going?
Yes,
How's the one into the 3 million illegals who voted? Remember, there was a... it's like he's looking for O.J.'s killers. I mean, the real killers that O.J. was looking for on the golf course.
Yeah.
These things, he says them, and then they disappear into the ether.
They do, and a lot of stuff he says, though, is pretty alarming. But actually, there's some stuff he says that I would think that you kind of like. You've been really tough on radical Islam. You've been sometimes even tough on...
Shouldn't we be?
Well, I'm just saying, right? Yeah, sure. I mean, it's hard to be fans of ISIS, but you've been tough on them. You've even been tough on the refugees at times. on that point, why isn't Trump your best president ever? I mean, he's going after him.
But as you said, he's going after them in the wrong way. I mean, the Muslim ban is not a great idea. It's un-American, and it's not helpful. It's just going to make things worse. What we should do, of course, is just be liberals on the issue. That's the big picture. We are liberals. We should be for equality of the sexes.
Yes.
Respect for minorities.
Yes.
Separation of church and state. Free speech. Right? You're liberals. These are all big liberal things. Okay. Well, we have to recognize the fact that the most very often illiberal, intolerant cultures in the world are in the Muslim countries. People are not crazy to be worried about assimilation, but Americans are very myopic. They only seem to see what's in America. There's like 3 million Muslims in America.
Yeah, 5, yeah.
They're not the problem.
True. Yeah.
But there's over 1.5 million around the world.
1.5 billion.
1.5 billion around the world. Okay. So yeah, I think what we should do also is cheer when there are Muslims elected to high office in the West, like the mayor of London.
Absolutely.
Because then they have to say, hey, I am for Western values.
Exactly.
Like that mayor came out against women wearing the face veil. That we need to hear more from Muslims. We need to ask more of them.
Well, I'll tell you what. I am very, very proud of American Muslims, as are you, on the front lines doing such a great job. We have like the most amazing Muslims in the world, as best I can tell. Some of them are.
Tell who you speak.
Oh, like for instance, a lot of times when people are, we stopped a terror plot. Sometimes the people who turned them in were actually Muslims, doing exactly what you want.
The chicken stand dude.
The chicken stand dude, exactly. It's like, hey,
that is an American hero. You're right. Yeah. That is a patriot.
Exactly.
When you put country and people's lives over your own family,
yeah,
it's like the Unabomber's brother turned him in.
See, and
that's hard to do. What?
Well, if your brother's a Unabomber, you probably could call the cops yourself.
Family is pretty powerful.
Family can be very powerful.
Right.
But I actually want to bring somebody into this conversation who has a different view of Trump than me or you. He's a pastor. He's here in Los Angeles. Let's hear from Reverend Mark.
Good evening to you both. It's so good to be with you, Van and Bill.
He is a pastor.
Yes.
I am.
He's lulling us in, isn't he?
Americans are now subject, truly, to increasing forms of terrorist attacks on U.S. soil. You may know just last Thursday night, in fact, a man described as Latino or Middle Eastern with a heavy beard, dressed in black with a beanie, tossed an explosive device into the Cheesecake Factory in Pasadena.
Guys, I want to thank you. Hopefully we learned something tonight. You know, if we didn't, we'll come back next week and we'll try again. Toodles, everybody.